The letter that broke my heart in 1981 was a forgery, written by my best friend, and it cost me the woman I loved and a son I did not know existed. Hey folks, Steve here. Welcome back to After Her Lies. Pull up a chair with me. I have a story to tell that I have put off for a long time. And before I get into it, I want to ask you a favor. I checked the channel stats this morning, and 96 of you who watch are not subscribed. That makes this old man a little sad. If you like these honest stories, please hit subscribe, tap that like button, and leave a comment at the end. Tell me what you think I should have done, and what you would have done in my place. Now let me pour my coffee and take you back to the first summer I thought I knew who I was. I was 23 and working at Wayne's Gulf on the corner of 3rd and Maple in our little Ohio town. The station had 2 pumps with those old rubber bell cords that would ring when you drove over. We wore blue shirts with our names on white ovals stitched over the pocket. Mine said Steve, like I needed the reminder. The air there always smelled like gasoline, rubber, and the coffee Wayne left on the hot plate too long. I was saving every dollar to buy a used Ford pickup with a bench seat and a radio that only caught 2 stations. The Good Country station came in clear after sunset, and there was a talk show that would bounce in and out when truckers rolled past with their CBs humming. Life was simple. I liked it that way. The first time I saw Nora, she walked in with a flat tire and a book in her hand. Women came by the station plenty, but usually they had their dads or boyfriends with them, and the men would hover at my elbow like I was going to loosen a wrong bolt and send them to an early grave. Nora stepped out of her car by herself, a gold Pinto with a cigarette burn on the passenger seat, and she smiled like we were already acquainted. She set the book on the counter. The cover was green and the pages were dog-eared. She said that tire had been going soft all week and she was praying it would hold till she got to the library. She was late starting her new job there. I told her prayers and tires both needed a little pressure sometimes. I still remember the way her hair fell out of a messy clip and the way she laughed when I said stupid things. She had a voice that sounded like you had just stepped inside out of the cold. She watched me patch that tire, and she told me she had moved up from Kentucky to live with her aunt. She said she liked the lake, that our town felt like a place you could come to a stop without feeling like the world passed you. She liked the quiet. I liked that too. I liked it a lot more with her around. She came back 2 days later with fresh library cards and a stack of books for me, even though I did not ask. She said a man who can fix things should also read things, and she handed me Steinbeck like it was a sandwich. I told her the only things I read were wiring diagrams and ball scores, but I took the book. That night I sat on my bed and started reading and ended up sitting on the floor because I did not want to stop, and I did not want to fall asleep and let the story end. I told her about it the next time she stopped by for gas. She smiled like I had passed a test that she had never said out loud. We started small. She would walk over during her lunch break and we would sit on milk crates out back, our backs against the cinder block wall, eating bologna sandwiches and counting the freight cars that rumbled by. I knew the names of the railroad companies from the logos, and she made up stories for where the trains were headed. She said she could sing. She would not sing for me at first. She said her aunt did not like it, said it stirred up old trouble. I did not push. She asked me about my folks. I told her dad worked at the factory until his back gave out, and Mum did odd jobs for the church. I told her I had a friend named Ray who could fix anything on an engine with a pair of pliers and a pocket knife. She asked if Ray was nice. I said I had known him since 5th grade and that was the same thing. By August, we were driving out to the state park in the evenings with a paper sack of fried chicken between us and a blanket in the bed of the truck. The first time she sang for me was on the fishing pier that smelled like old water and worms. She started low and quiet, almost like a whisper, but her voice reached into my chest and unknotted something. She sang those old Tammy Wynette songs, and she did not try to be perfect. She let the notes land where they wanted. If I close my eyes, I can still feel the night air on my arms and see the one bright light at the end of the pier and her mouth forming those words about standing by your man and knowing you are not the only one with a heart that breaks. When she stopped, the cicadas were back, and the lake was just a lake again, and I knew I wanted her to be the rest of my life. It did not take long for life to complicate what felt simple. That is how it goes, and if you are young listening to this, you can write that down. The first complication was Ray. He had a wide grin and a knack for making you feel like you were in on something special. He could make a carburetor purr, and he was the guy you called when your car made a noise that started with a whine and ended with a bang. He and I had rebuilt an old dirt bike together back in high school, and we had only one fight, about a girl neither of us even liked 2 months later. He was a good friend, or I thought he was. Ray took to Nora like a moth to a porch light. He teased me about her at first. He said library girls always seemed sweet until they alphabetized your heart and threw the extra bits in a book sale. I told him to shut it. He said he was glad I was happy. He came with us to the drive-in once or twice, third wheel, but he never seemed put out, and I was too stupid to notice the way his eyes followed her when she walked ahead to the snack bar. The second complication was her aunt. She was one of those women who looked at you like she could see your report card through your skin. Her name was Martha, and she kept a tidy house. She liked rules and calendars that you wrote on with a specific pen. She worked at the bank and had a way of saying your name that felt like a warning. She told me once on the porch that Nora had come to her to put distance between herself and people who did not have her best interest at heart. She said I seemed like a decent boy, but she hoped I understood that decency turned to dust when men wanted their way. I nodded because men like me say yes to women like that, and I promised that I would keep Nora safe. She nodded and said promises are easy, and she went back inside. That fall, Nora started singing at a little bar on the far side of town. It was not a fancy place. It was the kind of place where the jukebox never worked right and men in work boots came in with their sleeves still rolled up from the day. She stood on a plywood stage with a borrowed guitar, and she sang 3 nights a week, 2 sets a night, for tips. She said it made her feel like she could breathe. I sat in a corner where I could see the door and the stage, and I watched for trouble. Ray started coming too. He would shout requests she did not know and then tip her $5 for trying. When she finished her sets, we would sit at a table with a candle that had burned down low and talk about stupid things. She would count her tip money and shake her head and say she could not keep this up forever. She said maybe one day we would go south, Nashville or Memphis, and she would give it a real go. She would look at me with those eyes like she was waiting for me to talk her down or talk her into it. I told her I would go wherever her voice went. By Christmas, I had a ring. It was not much, a small diamond that caught the light in a humble way. I bought it from a man named Gus at a pawn shop that smelled like old wood and stories. He let me pay in installments because he said he knew a man in love when he saw one. I carried that ring in my pocket for a week, waiting for a night that felt like it would land right. On New Year's Eve, we drove out to the lake. The ice was thin along the shore, and the moon was so bright we did not need flashlights. I was ready to do it. My hands were sweating, and I worried I would fumble it, but before I could speak, she took my hands and told me she needed to confess something. She said her name was not Nora. She said it was Eleanor, and she had cut it down because it felt like a dress that did not fit. She said her aunt had told her to keep that quiet for a while, until people knew her as herself, and not as the girl who left somewhere. She said she was not from Kentucky, but from a small town in West Virginia, and the man she was leaving was not a lover, like people might assume, but her stepfather, who had taken her mother's house and kindness, and turned both into heavy things. She said he was the kind of man who smiled with his teeth and asked you to pass the butter and laid his hand on your knee. She said he resented her for not being a child anymore and for being exactly that. and she said she did not want me to think she was a liar. I said I did not care what letters came before the name she wanted to wear. I said I cared that she was safe and that she would sing again for people who would clap for the right reasons. We were going to tell Martha our plans in January. We would save up through spring. Maybe we would leave by summer. That was the plan. People always make plans in winter. It is good to have something warm to hold in your mind. What happens next is the part that never stopped hurting, and it will take me a minute to tell it right. One morning in late February, I came into the station to find Ray leaning on the counter, my name tag in 2 pieces in his hand. He said that was a joke. He said Wayne could sew it back. He had a look on his face like he had stepped in something. He said he was sorry, and he held out an envelope with my name written across it in Nora's handwriting. I knew that handwriting. She wrote like a person who had practiced to make sure people could read her. She was respectful even in ink. I opened the envelope and the world went thin. The letter said she had been lying to me. It said she had made a mistake thinking she could start over. It said she was leaving town with a man she had known before me, and that she was sorry for wasting my time and making promises she could not keep. It said I should not look for her. There was no date. There was no return address. There was only the truth sitting in the middle of the page like a stain. I drove to Martha's house with my heart pounding in my ears. The curtains were drawn. I knocked until my knuckles hurt. Finally, the door opened a crack and Martha peered out. She said Nora was gone. She said she had packed her things and gone, and she wished me well, and that was that. I said that could not be right. She shut the door. I stood on the porch for a long time before I drove away. I stopped by the bar where Nora sang. The owner, a woman named Pearl with gold bracelets that clinked, looked at me like she had become used to this look on men. She said the girl had been out sick. She said she thought there was a cold going around. She told me to go on home and drink water and get some rest. I went home and did not sleep. Ray said he was sorry. Ray said he was as surprised as me. He said sometimes people are not who we think they are. He said he had tried to tell me not to go too fast. I told him to shut up. I told him to leave me alone. He looked mad for a second, and then he folded it up and said he would be around if I needed to talk. I did not speak to him for a week. Then I did, because he was there and life goes on. You mop the floors at the end of the day, you count the till, you go home, you come back. That is what you do. For months I kept the ring in my sock drawer like a dead bird I could not bury yet. I drove by Martha's house a few times to see if the curtains would be different, and they never were. I went to the bar twice and left before I got a drink. I told myself I had been a fool, and I could still be a useful fool with a job and a truck and a few friends and a mother who loved me even when I did not make sense to her. When the year turned, I started seeing a girl from church. Her name was Paula. She wore her hair in a simple clip and liked to go to the movies. She asked questions that had answers. When she laughed, it sounded like she meant it. We were married the next fall. We had a daughter named Sarah. She made the world new again, the way babies do. She smelled like laundry and applesauce and hope. I should tell you the truth here. Paula was good to me, and I was not always good back. I was there, and I was a provider, and I did not stray. But there was a piece of me that had gone with Nora that I did not know how to mourn. Some men drink to drown that kind of thing. I worked. I took overtime whenever it was offered. I watched night baseball with Sarah asleep on my chest. I kept the ring in the drawer, and every 6 months I would hold it for a minute and then put it back. Like it was a ritual, I could not stop performing, even though it did not help. Years tossed by like pages in a phone book. The factory closed, and then it came back smaller with a new sign. Ray started his own place across town, a 2-bay garage with a soda machine that ate quarters. We were friends again the way men are, which is to say we did not talk about the thing we should have talked about. We fixed things and we ate sandwiches and we told jokes that did not matter. We went fishing twice a summer. We got sunburned and we complained about our knees. Time is a thief and a nurse all at once. Then a small thing happened that started the old world up again. I was at Gus's pawn shop looking for a used guitar for Sarah, who had decided she wanted to learn. Gus was gone and his son ran the place. I was flipping through the glass case with the rings, watching the light bounce off the little stones when I saw it. You will think I am making this up, but I promise I am not. The ring I had bought for Nora was sitting in the case, same humble sparkle, same low setting, and when I asked to see it, there it was, scratched on the inside like I had done all those years ago. S+E. I stared at it until the kid asked me if I was okay. He said the ring had come in a few months earlier with a lot of old jewelry from a woman who was moving south to be near family. He flipped through a receipt book. He said the name Eleanor Price. The breath went out of me so hard I had to sit on a stool. I bought the ring back. The kid wrapped it in brown paper like it was nothing. I put it in my pocket and it felt too heavy to carry and too important to leave behind. That night I sat at the kitchen table long after Paula and Sarah had gone to bed, and I turned the ring over in my fingers like I was trying to play a song by ear. Eleanor, not Nora. Price, not the name she had told me that night at the lake. A new last name or the old one she had tried to bury. It was a clue with a pulse. I did not sleep much. This next part is where I did something I am not proud of. I did not tell Paula. I should have. I should have brought her into the kitchen and laid the ring on the table and told her I was going to chase a ghost. Instead, I made a quiet plan. For years I had kept a little spare money tucked away in an envelope for a boat I never bought. I took a few hundred and I called in a favor with a guy who worked records at the courthouse. I asked him to look up any Eleanor Price with a date of birth that matched what I thought I knew. He called me back a week later with two possibilities. One had left the county. One had a parking ticket by the lake last June. I circled the latter and went for a drive on my day off. I found her in an apartment over a furniture store with a crooked open sign. The stairs creaked like they were scolding me. I knocked on the blue door with the cracked paint, and a woman's voice called out that it was open. I stepped inside and time folded up. She was standing by the window with a stack of shirts, a laundry basket at her feet, and she turned and looked at me the way a person does when a memory walks into their house. She had laugh lines at the corners of her eyes. Her hair was shorter. She was still the same person I had watched sing on that shabby plywood stage. She said my name, the way she used to, like it belonged to her mouth. I did not have words for a minute. I held up the little ring box like a flag. I said I found this. She put a hand to her mouth. She said she had sold it to pay for her mother's medication, and that broke her heart because she had promised herself she would never let go of it as long as she could help it. I asked her what had happened. She sat on the couch. I sat in a chair. We were too old and too careful to reach for each other right away. We started to talk. We talked for 3 hours. We talked like people who had been holding their breath for half our lives. She told me that back in 1981, she had not left me. She had been told that I had left her. Ray had told her, standing on Martha's porch, that I was seeing someone else, and that I had gotten that girl in trouble, and that marriage was already arranged to make it right. Ray had said he was sorry for me, but I was not the man she thought I was. Ray had said Nora deserved better. She had believed him. She said it sounded like some stupid noble thing I would do, ruin my happiness to do what was right for someone else. She said she had cried for 2 nights and then packed her things and wrote me a letter and left it under my wiper blade at the station, the only place she was sure I would see it. She said she had not put a stamp because she wanted to be sure it got into my hands. I told her I had gotten a letter. I told her it had said that she had lied and she was leaving with some man. She shook her head. She said she had written nothing like that. Her letter had said that she loved me and she had to leave because she did not want to be the reason I had to hurt another person. She had asked me to meet her at the pier in 2 days if I wanted to come with her. She said she had waited there for 3 hours before she understood I was not coming. She had thrown up in the weeds. She had wiped her mouth with her sleeve and taken the late bus out of town. She had gone to her mother. They had left for a new town together a week later. The room tilted in a way that had nothing to do with age. Ray, my friend. He had been the one to hand me the forgery. He had stood beside me while I read it. Something hot rose in my chest like a fever. I wanted to put my fist through the wall and break something that would stay broken. I wanted to climb in a truck and drive straight to his house and demand answers, even if those answers came with blood. Nora put a hand on my arm like she had been reading my mind since I was 23. She said, "Breathe." She said there was something else. I told her I could not take something else. She said I needed to. She was right. She told me that when she left, she was pregnant. She had been late and she had taken a test in the bathroom at the bar with the door latch that never worked. She had told no one. She had slid the test into her pocket and walked out the back like she had swallowed a bird. She had planned to tell me at the pier. When I did not come, she had decided that my life was my life, and she would not make a claim on it. She had gone to her mother. They had moved. She had had the baby in a small hospital where the nurse called her honey and did not ask too many questions. She had named him Thomas in her head. She had cried and held him and then handed him to a woman from an agency with kind eyes. She had signed the papers and walked out into a parking lot that smelled like hot tar and rain. She had gone home and slept for a day and woke up broken in a new way. I leaned forward with my elbows on my knees and my hands over my face like a tent. You ever have a thought so loud it is a feeling? I had a son. He would have been a man by then with a job and a favorite coffee and a temper that flared or didn't. I had not been there when he learned to ride a bike. I had not been there for the broken arm or the missing tooth or the first day of school. I had not done any of the things you do. I had not been there to fail or to show up. Life had tricked me with an empty pocket. I did not cry then. I am crying now as I tell you this because maybe that is how tears work. They wait for you to be old enough to carry them. We sat quiet until Nora asked me something she did not want the answer to. She asked if I had been happy. I told her the truth. I said I had tried and sometimes I had been. I told her about Paula and Sarah. I told her about Sarah singing at the school talent show with a paper star pinned to her dress and how I had made a fool of myself yelling. Nora smiled and cried at the same time. She said a daughter was the nicest kind of redemption. She said she had never married. She said she had loved one man and he had not come to the pier. She said she had tried to move on and it had never landed right. She said that was not fair to anyone, but it was the truth. We made a plan. We would find Ray and ask him to tell us exactly what he had done and why. We would not scream, at least not at first. We would try to keep our bodies from doing what they wanted to do, which was fly apart. We would see what there was to salvage. She took my hand then, the first time in decades, and for a second all the years were a sheet you could lift. We did not kiss. We were not fools. We had both been around long enough to know the difference between a moment and an answer. Ray was dying. I did not know it when I dialed his number, but he answered weak and said he was at St. Luke's and that he would be glad for a visit. He coughed. He said to bring cigarettes even though he could not smoke them there. It was a joke. It did not land without the grin. The hospital smelled like lemon cleaner and loss. He looked smaller in the bed. He looked like he had been swallowed by a blanket and then spit back out. He smiled when he saw me, and then he saw Nora behind me, and the smile slid off, and he started to cry in this ugly way that ripped at something in me even then. I have seen men cry in 100 ways, but rarely like that. He put his hands over his face the way I had on Nora's couch. He said, "I am sorry, and I have been sorry for so long, I do not know how to remember the man I was before it." He said he had been in love with her the way boys get it in their heads that they are owed something, and that if they are good and they hover and they say nice things, then the world will pay them back with the thing they want most. He said he had been jealous of me because I did not try so hard and she loved me anyway. He said he had told himself he was protecting her when he went to Martha's porch and lied about me. He said he had taken her letter from my wiper blade and burned it in a coffee can behind the station. He said he had sat at the counter and written the letter I got in his clumsy version of her neat hand, and he had watched me read it, and he had watched me crumble, and he had told himself it was justice for me not appreciating what I had. He said he had been drunk on the idea that he could change the story. Nora did not yell. She did not throw anything. She told him what he had taken from her. She told him how she had sat on a pier and watched the water and named a baby she did not get to say goodnight to. She told him what loneliness feels like from the inside. Her voice did not crack. When she was done, Ray tried to reach for her hand and she stepped back and shook her head, and I was proud of her for that. He looked at me and said he was sorry, like the word itself might be enough. I told him it was not, but I believed him. I believed that he had punished himself for years. That does not put bones back in your body, but it is something. Ray said there was one more thing. He clicked the bedside table open and pulled out a plastic bag with an old cassette tape. He said he had recorded a confession 10 years back, and he had meant to send it, and he had not, because every day it was easier to put it off than to pour salt on the wound. He said the tape had everything. He said if I wanted to play it, I could. I told him I did not need to hear anything that I had not already heard out of his mouth, but I took it anyway to prove to myself I was not dreaming. He died 3 weeks later. I went to the funeral with a knot in my stomach. Nora did not come. The church was half full of people who had come to say goodbye to the man who had patched their brakes or changed their oil or let them pay next Friday. People are never the one thing you need them to be for your story to make sense. They carry whole towns in their hands without you noticing. This would be where a movie would give you a clean ending, a bow, a sunset, a song that tells you what you should feel. Life is different. It keeps going and it dares you to keep going too. Nora and I met again on Saturdays for a while and walked the path by the lake where the geese make a mess of everything. We talked about weather and groceries, and then we slid into the long hurt. We filled in the missing days like we were laying bricks. We did not tell many people we were seeing each other. It felt like something that could break if too many eyes were on it. After a time, we both knew that even with the truth in our hands, we could not go back and be the people who might have done it right. There is no going back. There is only the road in front of you, and you walk it with the feet you have left. We did not try to build a new life together. We held the old one, and we honored it, and we let it sit where it belonged. There was the matter of Thomas, the name she had spoken into a hospital room before handing a baby away. Sarah had bought me a DNA kit for Christmas the year before, one of those funny things kids get their parents when they are trying to make memories happen on a schedule. I had done it and never mailed it. I mailed it. 2 months later, I had a message that there was a match that looked close. A man in his 30s in Indianapolis with a smile that looked like mine in the mirror around the eyes. His profile picture had him on a ladder painting a house with 2 boys on the lawn making faces. I sat at the computer and tried to decide how to knock on the door of a life. I wrote a message and I deleted it, and I wrote another. I told him I believed I might be his biological father. I told him I was not asking anything of him. I told him I understood if he wanted me to disappear. I told him my name and the date and the town. I told him I had a daughter named Sarah who would like to know if she had a brother walking around in the world. And I told him about Nora, whom I still sometimes called by her old name when I was tired and my tongue wanted to be young. I hit send and walked away. I made a sandwich, I picked up the tape from Ray and put it in an old Walkman that Sarah had left at my house when she moved out. I pressed play and listened to a younger Ray tell a story I already knew, in a voice that still had gravel and swagger. I listened to him cry before he turned it off. I put the tape away in a drawer where hard things go. The man in Indianapolis wrote back the next day. He said his name was Ben. He said his adoptive parents were good people and he owed them his life, and he always felt like a piece was missing, and he had told himself that was normal. The way adopted kids sometimes told themselves they were not allowed to be curious. He said he had taken the DNA test because his boys had a peanut allergy, and he wanted to see what else he should watch for. He said he had thought about looking, and then he had not. And then my message had landed like a small earthquake. We talked, we called. I drove to see him with a cooler full of Tupperware because I am my mother's son, and food is the language of love I know how to speak without messing it up too much. I saw his boys shoot each other with Nerf darts, and I sat at a patio table with his wife and watched him mow his lawn in a way that made me irrationally proud. He looked at me often like he was studying for a test. He had questions I could not answer. He had ones I could. We did not hug the first time. We did the second. Nora met him on a Sunday in June at a diner with blue booths and a waitress who called everyone honey. She wore the necklace she had worn the last time she sang at the bar. She slid into the booth across from him, and they looked at each other like people who had held on to stories and were trying to see if they fit on the same shelf. She cried. He cried. The waitress put napkins on the table without a word. When the food came, no one was hungry, and then as the afternoon unspooled, we all were. People always ask me in the comments if I hate Ray. Hate is a heavy coat to wear every day. I put it on some mornings, and it warms me the way anger always does, hot and useful in the short term. But I cannot carry it around forever. He was a friend who did a terrible thing for reasons that sound like lies, even when they are technically true. He was a thief, and he was also the man who pulled me out of a ditch with his own chain and refused to let me pay him for the new one when mine snapped. He was the sum of his acts, like we all are, and the math does not bring him to a place where I can invent a goodness that dims what he did. I choose to forgive him because it makes my chest less tight. I do not offer that forgiveness as a gift for him. He is beyond gifts now. I offer it to myself so I can sit on the porch in the evening and breathe all the way down into my belly. As for Nora, I said her name on camera for the first time today, and you can see my hands shake. People thought this channel was named to shame her. After her lies sounds mean if you do not know me. It was a joke at first. It was me being clever and not wanting to say the truth straight. Now it means something else. It means what comes after any lie is told. The work, the mending, the honest quiet you have to sit in if you want to grow old without turning into a bitter story you tell strangers. After her lies, I learned how to love my daughter the way she needed instead of the way I thought might impress people. After her lies, I learned to show up on time and listen. After her lies, I learned to sing along to songs I used to only hear as background noise. After her lies, I learned to tell the truth even when it costs me. I asked Nora once if she ever wished we had both just run away that winter and not told anyone and built something in a town where no one knew our names. She said yes and no. Yes, because the picture is pretty, and no, because life is not a picture, it is a stew of choices and accidents and other people's weather. She said we did the best we could with what we had and with the lies we were handed like misprinted maps. She said she loved me and I loved her, and sometimes that is a song you carry in your pocket, not one you play on stage every night. I went home and lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and decided that peace can look like that. Quiet and deserved. If you are still listening, thank you. I know this was long, I know it was a lot. I share it because some of you carry letters you did not write, and rings you never gave, and children whose pictures you only see in your mind, and friends you remember and want to forget in the same breath. You are not alone. The heart is a stubborn animal. It keeps beating in the dark. Before I sign off, let me climb back into the YouTube part of this. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe to the channel. Help me push that number down because 96 of viewers still are not subscribed, and that makes me sad in a silly old man way. Hit like so the algorithm wakes up and shows this to someone who needs it, and leave me a comment. Tell me if you would have driven to the hospital. Tell me if you would have forgiven Ray. Tell me if you have a ring in a drawer you should not let live there anymore. I am Steve. This is After Her Lies. I will be here next week, same chair, same coffee, with another story about the things we keep and the things we learn to let go. Until then, be kinder than you feel like being, and turn off the lights when you leave a room. It saves a little money, and it makes you feel like you are in charge of something in this wild world.